So I'm here to discuss the recent controversy involving Taylor Nicole Dean and her most popular critic, a channel called Whatever, who seems to have initiated this whole anti-Taylor fiasco. I'm just gonna call this out for exactly what this is. It's just wrong. I understand that people might start putting me under the magnifying glass and start talking crap about my animal care, especially. I'll probably get a lot of negative comments about the type of animals that I keep, and I'm pretty used to that, so, bring it on, I guess. I'll probably get flamed, someone actually hears this video, but none of that changes any of the facts. So, just to set the record straight, I am in no conceivable way a fan of Taylor Nicole Dean. I actually uploaded a video last year criticizing her for her hypocrisy regarding, ironically, one of the subjects I'm going to mention in this video, which would be the high mortality rates of the fish keeping hobby. So I was heavily criticized by Taylor's devoted stans for saying things like that, and my commentary about her video buying exotic animals online, in which she made some rather uninformed negative comments about people who own zoological mammals, so to speak, including saying that we should be institutionalized. I know that was probably a joke, but I know that she was still making very real implications about why people shouldn't have those types of animals, and it wouldn't be the first time that she said that people shouldn't own a certain type of animal. That seems to be a thing with her. So anyway, when I made the comments on the video, I was very much praised and lauded for doing it. So in true karmatic fashion, now she's the one receiving the hate. But unfortunately, and I really mean this, it's very unfortunate that I just can't condone it. So once again, as usual, I'm the one with the unpopular, non-trendy opinion, and I'm probably going to continue to get hate for this, but, whatever. So speaking of whatever, she's this completely anonymous YouTuber who is currently being promoted as some kind of pet tube detective, and she's getting a bunch of praise for doing a whole bunch of investigative research. And so recently I kind of found out all of her research, pretty much all of it, comes from a forum called LOL Cow. You can find about 90% of the things that she said in her video in one form, in one page. And I will post the link in the description. It's almost verbatim. It looks like a transcript of one of her videos. And I just found this out, and I'm kind of recording this late. I'm actually re-recording this introduction after having just found this out, so I was kind of shocked by it. I actually thought she came up with this stuff herself, and I go on for the rest of the video talking about it, but I realized it's not even her. She didn't come up with it. A lot of people, a lot of know-it-alls in this LOL Cow forum seem to be the ones that are making these claims. These people who are claiming to have experience, but they're all fully anonymous. They don't even have usernames. Everybody's anonymous. It's really confusing, and it's hard to make sense of this type of forum, but that's what it is. This forum seems to be dedicated to talking smack about various YouTubers. They talk about Exotic, they talk about other YouTubers. They seem to have this hate for them. I don't really understand the culture of the site right now. I just kind of landed on it, and I'll probably be looking into it more in the future when I get some time. I see that Whatever is part of this little this community of pet tuber haters, essentially, and she promoted her video there first. And Whatever is somebody who claims that she has experience with rats, some freshwater fish, and some reptiles. So let me just try to get right to why I think some, not all, but a good portion of her claims are just absolute crap. The title of her video is called Taylor Nicole Dean is an animal hoarder and her relationship with Johnny Craig is not goals. Well, that's one of the videos. She starts her video by defining what animal hoarding is by reading Wikipedia's definition. And that is, animal hoarding is keeping a higher than usual number of animals as domestic pets without ability to properly house or care for them, while at the same time denying this inability. So right away, that's nonsense. That's probably one of the more deceitful and misleading claims that people keep saying about Taylor that is really getting to me. Here's the thing about the word hoarding. It's an emotionally charged and sensationalistic word. I mean, have you ever seen those episodes of the show Hoarders and Hoarding Buried Alive? And I think there was one that was about animals that came on Animal Planet at one time. That right there, that's what real hoarding is, or at least that's what I think of when I think of hoarding. It's when animals are kept in small cages, not cages that are just a little smaller than what somebody thinks is ideal, but cages that animals can barely move in. Either that, or they might just be running around the house and the house is kind of decaying from the inside out. Oftentimes, the animals can even be literally starving and they're in desperate need of medical attention. Throughout these decrepit homes of these hoarders, investigators often find skeletons of animals that have passed on years ago and the occupant has no idea what happened to them. So that's what I think of when I think of hoarding. And this is the photo that Wikipedia uses in its article. Is that something that you would call Taylor? Does that look similar? No, it's completely misleading. Now, one could possibly stretch the definition of hoarding to include her situation because it's not like the word is strictly defined in regards to the amount of animals and their so-called poor conditions. But the word is clearly being used to describe the alleged care of Taylor's animals as horrific and severely substandard, and that simply isn't true, or there's no evidence of it. Alright, so let's look at this so-called evidence of Taylor being a hoarder. Well, in another video, she supposedly reveals she is a hoarder. Apparently, she admits to acquiring animals to make herself feel better. Apparently, this is an admission of hoarding, but it really is not based on the criteria I just spoke about. I'm not condoning impulse buys, but this type of thing is hard to defend because it's not ideal, and I'm not saying it is perfect, but what I'm arguing here is that this isn't hoarding or animal cruelty or any of these other highly incriminating labels, at least by itself. It's not recommended to buy a lot of pets to make yourself feel better or whatever it sounded like she was saying, but really, if you can care for these pets, it really isn't that big of a deal, especially the types of animals she was getting. They weren't dogs and cats. They were not small mammals like rabbits, ferrets, whatnot. They're literally reptiles and bugs and things like that. And you can have a lot of those, and it's not that big of a deal. You can actually buy a lot of snakes. They're still pretty low maintenance. Of course, people don't think Taylor can care for them at this time, and they have various reasons. So is it true? I can't say for a fact that it isn't, but what I can say is that there's not really any evidence that she can't. Like, whatever claims that Taylor is often sick and goes on vacation, and she has over 50 pets, the animals have bare minimum cages that look like they had leftover decorations thrown in. So here's the thing about this that I find really strange and bizarre. Whatever is from Germany, and supposedly Germans have higher standards than the US, whatever even makes mention of this. So my question to her is, why were you a fan of Taylor in the first place? From what I understand, she has always been an American and has used these so-called horrible American standards for pet keeping. So what changed? Was it the death of the cowfish that made people all of a sudden decide to see all the horrible American caretaking standards or something? That alone doesn't make sense, but okay. Back to her claims of these bare minimum cages. So here's what you need to know about that. It could be your opinion that her cages look barren, as whatever calls them, or that they aren't big enough, but here's the facts. All of her cages meet or exceed typical American standards. If you don't agree with these standards, that's great for you, but You don't call someone a hoarder or a cruel person over that. Some people are criticizing the fact that you keep snakes in tubs. Well, that's normal. That's something people, many, many millions of people do that. And, that's something a lot of breeders do. And for some reason, people think that if you're a regular pet owner, all of a sudden it's cruel. But if a breeder is doing it, then okay. And they even buy animals from these people. And yet, apparently, they think keeping snakes in these breeder setups is cruel. Well, if you think that, you can't really buy any snakes. You can't really support the trade because that's how it's done. These snakes breed in these conditions. And generally, not in all cases, in general, a lot of animals, non-domesticated animals, I should add, tend not to breed and do well for too long if they're in a miserable existence. And I do keep snakes in tubs right now. I am upgrading, but I still think tubs are fine for certain snake species like ball pythons. So you can hate tubs, but this doesn't mean you get to call someone a freaking hoarder. And whatever is calling this rat enclosure barren, I mean, that is completely and utterly ridiculous. I can go into a boring rant about animal enrichment and how I feel many owners are decorating their animal enclosures in ways that look exciting to the human eyes, but might not be sufficient for the actual animal, but that's not really relevant right now. So the only thing that one needs to take from this is that people have their opinions on how to care for their animals, and they differ. Violating them doesn't make someone a hoarder on par with people who have deceased pets hidden in their sofa. Anyone who calls this hoarding is at best extremely naive. All of these animals that I can see have perfectly acceptable enclosures, and I'm standing firm on that. They look fine to me. There's nothing dramatically wrong with them that I would say, now wait a minute, that's wrong, that's cruel. Those animals are suffering. No way. So you can't call that hoarding. So regarding Taylor's heroin use and this person that she's in a relationship that doesn't seem to be such a great person, that's not something I'm comfortable discussing. Well, those things could possibly affect the animals. I don't have the evidence of this, and I don't think it's appropriate for really anyone to be discussing that. And I really don't see why that's such a huge issue. So I'm just going to stick to the photos and the text and the so-called evidence that apparently prove Taylor is a hoarder and that she can't care for her animals. So here's the big video right here. This is a video where whatever actually states that Taylor's animal care is inadequate. Proof and evidence. That's a serious claim. So I'm going to take a look at her so-called proof and evidence. The first thing that she says, wow, her ball python enclosures are 48 by 16 inches when the minimum, she says, is 4 feet by 2 by 2. I mean, that is so she's basically complaining about Taylor's enclosures being a couple inches off. Not to mention that she just pulled that figure, 4 by 2 by 2. I don't know where she got that from. But many people recommend 36 inches. Again, that's an opinion. She has no business stating that this is evidence of someone's animal care being inadequate. If you have a problem with 36 inches, take it up with the people who recommend that, because there's many, many, many sites that recommend that. And I happen to think that the average size ball python, one that's not overly large, should be fine in that size too. But gosh, so you have a difference of opinion. Someone's not a hoarder because of that. She complains about a corn snake needs more what she calls decoration and another hide. So apparently inadequate because the snake needs another hide. She also says that her snake enclosures are quote unquote sad and that they need more decoration. And I'm not exactly sure what decoration means. It really depends as far as enrichment that on the reptiles and will affect on to the snakes. So I'm still in the process of looking up research that actually confirms or provides evidence for, not proves, but provides evidence that various decorations will actually have a meaningful impact on the snake's welfare. but it still seems like a rather small thing to be picking on, and it's very normal for people to have these so-called sad enclosure. I don't think that's something to call someone's animal care inadequate over. She also says that there's a little piece of shedding in one of the videos, and that means that Taylor's snakes are having bad sheds. I mean, I don't think a little piece of shedding is much indication of anything. It seems like there's many ways that could have ended up there without that being an indication that the snakes are being kept in bad conditions. It seems like a completely ridiculous small thing to be fretting over. Then she complains about Taylor's thermometers, or at least she says that she used to have some bad ones. Again, another thing that doesn't seem like that's a huge error, and of course then she improved upon them, and that's kind of typical for people who are starting to own snakes. She complains that she uses tank heaters instead of radiant heat panels. I think most snake owners don't use radiant heat panels. Radiant heat panels, from what I read, are great, and I myself am upgrading to them, but it sounds like that's something that people with a little more advanced snake care, I don't see how that's something to call someone's animal care inadequate because they don't use radiant heat panels. A lot of people should be offended by that, because using under the tank heaters is pretty standard in the industry, at least in America. I don't know, again, what's going on in Germany. I know that radiant heat panels are expensive. Most people don't use them, and is it okay or not? I don't know. I'm not sure. I prefer to use radiant heat panels. Is that really something to call her animal care inadequate over? And also she says that she needs to invest in a herpstat. Again, that's another major investment, and most people don't use them. They probably use cheaper versions of thermostats, and I don't think that that's something to call someone's animal care inadequate over. So again, she rails against the cheap equipment she supposedly uses, and then she goes on this strange little mini rant against Taylor having Funko Pops, and that she buys things for her rapist boyfriend, and that whole little section of her video kind of sounds really stupid. I just don't understand why she's freaking out about somebody having some Funko Pops, which, by the way, they're not very expensive. So I don't think that if you don't buy a couple Funko Pops that all of a sudden you're going to have a couple $100 for a Herpstat 4. So this is one part that really bothered me. She claims that Taylor manhandles her snakes, and she says, and I quote, "Imagine your whole body being held up by only your neck," because Taylor holds her snakes with one hand. I really don't think that there's any comparison holding a snake like that to holding a primate or other terrestrial animals by their neck. There's no freaking comparison. Imagine that my whole body's being held by my neck. I would die. That's called hanging. That I would not survive my whole body being held up by my neck. So that right there shows that I think a snake's physiology is a little different from mine. I don't think the Taylor's holding them by their neck, but I don't believe there's a part of the snake that's considered the neck. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but there's no comparison to a human being held up by their neck, or a dog, or animals that have legs. Snakes are entirely different. So I'm kind of surprised no one brought that up, because it sounded really dumb. I don't understand why no one brought that up. And she says we can't possibly know if she only does this for pictures, since we haven't seen any pictures of her doing otherwise, essentially. Okay, so because you haven't seen her take pictures of doing something else, you know that she holds her snakes like that all the time. Not that I think that there's something wrong with holding the snake like that for a couple seconds for a picture. I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with it. That's the way snakes are held when you use snake hooks sometimes, and no comparison to holding other animals that have legs. There's absolutely no comparison. So again, that's such a petty little criticism. It's kind of unreal, and no one is bringing this up, it seems. So then she says she only interacts with her snakes for feeding and pictures. Wow, so that makes her animal care inadequate. My snakes don't really like to be interacted with, so I think that's a good deal for them, especially ball pythons. Now, I know some people might think you should take your snakes out. Again, that's an opinion. Other people are of the opinion that snakes don't like to be interacted with, and there's no problem with keeping them in there and only interacting with them for feeding. I think that's pretty standard as well. It's something I pretty much do. I don't think that my snakes want to be played with. I think that they're fine with it. She says Taylor must enjoy feeding live because she doesn't make an effort to not feed live, and that she knocks her feeders unconscious. And she says she calls this animal cruelty. So it's a complicated subject. First of all, if Taylor is knocking the animals unconscious, it's not really live feeding. I guess it depends on whether or not they're stunned or alive, but the fact of the matter is, if you're knocking them out, you are making an effort to be humane. Now, whether or not it is humane is another story. It's probably controversial. The thing that you need to take away from this, the only thing you need to know is that people do this. They think they're being humane. So I don't view that as an intentionally cruel act. If you do it correctly and the animal is unconscious or dead, then that is actually a way more humane way to do it. I would rather have the rodent be not conscious if they're going to be fed alive to an animal, or I prefer for them to be dead. So if you knock them out of consciousness, that will actually be more humane for the animal. So the only problem is, do they actually get knocked unconscious? Does it actually work? If it doesn't work, then it could potentially be more cruel than feeding the animal alive to the snake. So that's a problem. It's a potential problem, but it's not fair to say that someone does not make an effort to not feed live, because they go out of their way to actually try to do this, and it doesn't sound like a pleasant thing to do. I didn't see her present any evidence that she's not making an effort. So, again, that's also an unfair criticism. She says her snakes must not be eating because the enclosures suck. Well, I don't believe that she has any evidence that the snakes aren't eating because the enclosures suck. Snakes don't eat for many different reasons. I don't even know if she has evidence that the snakes aren't eating. I don't know. Is she saying that because they don't eat frozen thawed and rather eat live? Again, that sounds completely ridiculous. Ball pythons can be complicated animals. Can't just declare that the enclosures suck because they're a couple inches off of your preferred minimum. She says that she feeds her snakes too often. Some should eat only every 2 to 3 weeks. I'm not sure which snakes only eat 2 to 3 weeks. I'm not sure which one she's referring to, and she did not provide that information. Either way, that also sounds like that's not a huge mistake to make, if she's actually making that mistake. She says the sizes of the prey are either too big or too small, and her proof of this is that she said one snake should be on rats. Okay, so again, this sounds like somebody who doesn't keep snakes or something. I don't know what's going on here, because not everything is perfect all the time. Some snakes, ball pythons especially, they'll only eat mice. So sometimes you're stuck feeding them mice for a while and you're trying to convert them or whatever. There's many different reasons why a snake won't be on an ideal prey size. Again, no indication that the animal care is inadequate. These are problems that many keepers have. And I don't know why she's holding Taylor to these extremely high standards. It's one thing if Taylor is promoting herself as having the best possible care in the world. I don't know if she is, because I don't watch her. I really don't. So correct me if I'm wrong. Otherwise, these little nitpicks seem outrageous to me. And then she says that Taylor has no idea how to feed rats and hedgehogs. There's too many vegetables in a single photo of her rats. This idea that you know exactly how an animal is fed all the time based on a picture, and if there's too many vegetables in a bowl, like you're able to perform an analysis of the contents of the bowl by looking at it. That also seems ridiculous. She says hedgehogs have low quality food. I didn't see any evidence of this. I don't even know what that means. What is low quality food? I don't know. I need that strictly defined. The snakes are not quarantined. And she says that they're quarantined in a bathroom, which is unsanitary and stressful. Why is it unsanitary and stressful? She's not keeping the snakes in a toilet. She just says it, and people accept it, why? It's just a room. It's a room where people happen to do their business, but it doesn't mean it has to be unsanitary for the snake, and I have no knowledge of why that would be a problem. And then she says something that I'm not sure about. She says she treated an axolotl fungus infection with iodine baths. She says this is torturous, and then she shows, as proof of this, she shows a statement about iodine injection. Okay, it sounds like she was doing this because she's trying to cure a problem. Is that something that people do? I looked it up and I saw at least one forum where people did that, and she wasn't injecting the iodine, which is what she links to. So I'm not exactly sure about that one. But whatever the case is, it sounds like she was just trying to help the animal, which again doesn't sound like a problem to me. So I would be remiss without discussing this infamous list. This list is substantially composed of arthropods and fish. Due to many critics, including some of the popular YouTubers, like one of these YouTubers called Repzilla and whoever else, have any experience with keeping these animals? Because if they did, they would know that it's very unfortunately common to lose fish. In fact, I would go as far as to say that every person who's ever kept fish has lost them prematurely. Literally everyone, especially marine fish. If you want an example of this, look at the YouTubers who keep or have kept fish. They've lost fish and people accept it. Well, one of those popular YouTubers is Solid Gold Aquatics, and she's had issues with losing fish, yet I don't see her scrutinized in such a ridiculous manner. There's literally no evidence that Taylor did something extremely negligent to cause the deaths of these fish. There's nothing. I mean, even at one point in my video, when I criticized Taylor a year ago, I said that her fish would probably die prematurely because it's very common.
I wonder if she's ever mentioned to her followers that so many of these fish die prematurely. I would go as far as to say it's 99% of them do. And it's likely hers probably will as well. I'm not saying that to be really that critical. I'm just stating the fact essentially.
And that's one of the points I was trying to make. And I got attacked for that, and so many people told me that her fish was doing fine and all that, but I said it's probably going to happen, and it did happen, and people are freaking out, and it's ridiculous. Taylor's fish keeping appears to be pretty typical. If she dosed an algae medication and that caused something to happen, well, unfortunately, sometimes things like that happen. This is entirely different from negligence, hoarding, or cruelty. In fact, people keep saying Taylor has 50 animals. They keep repeating she's got 50 pets, but give me a break. A good portion of these pets are fish. You can't count individual fish as like a whole pet. You can have 50 fish in one tank. That doesn't really mean, it technically means you have 50 pets, but what does it really mean? It's not the same as having 50 dogs or 50 birds or even 50 hamsters. It's extremely misleading for anyone to say Taylor has 50 pets or that she's lost whatever number of pets when most of those animals are fish, invertebrates, and snakes. Snakes are pretty low maintenance pets. They eat once every 7 to 10 days. You can have 8 snakes and it won't be as much work as a single bird. I've had 8 snakes at one point. It's not the same. One bird is way more work than 8 snakes and maybe even 15 snakes, depending on the species, of course, but most snakes are pretty low maintenance. So another dead pet on this laughable list includes a very young kitten. We should know those are hard to care for. Things happen when animals are really young. And throughout the list, only the hedgehogs are probably the only number that give me a little pause, but it's perfectly possible that they had some kind of genetic problems since hedgehogs are bred extensively in captivity. So I don't know that for sure, but what I'm saying is the list of animals that have died is not in any way, shape, or form indicative of substandard care. It just isn't. And rehoming pets isn't a crime either. The pets she rehomed again were fish and other animals that aren't emotionally bonded to humans, so as long as they went to a good home, there's nothing there to criticize. So I don't know why that's even there on this list. It doesn't mean anything. Again, the spreadsheet, it's a complete joke. Period. So let's talk about these perfect people. These people were making comments about how Taylor should have done this and that and yada yada regarding certain incidents like this described electrical malfunction killing her frog and 2 skinks. Some people are just shocked and appalled that she didn't check on her animals for around 9 hours, because who does that? Who doesn't check on their pets every 2 hours? Well, for starters, people who sleep, people who work, people who do other things in their lives besides own reptiles. Does this mean you shouldn't own reptiles? Because you leave your house every now and then, and sometimes you're gone for a few hours, and you can't check up on your animal every 2 hours? Accidents happen, and talk is just really cheap. I can guarantee that the people who are running their mouths about this accident and their so-called perfect care have some hidden information that would be pretty incriminating on their part. I think there are many more pet keepers out there who are keeping quiet because I know they too have had days when their animals weren't checked on every 2 hours. Is it really that freakish? So while there are YouTube comments that are virtue signaling, I'm willing to bet it's just a bunch of hot air. The YouTuber Repzilla was saying something about Taylor overloading the electricity in some way, and he said that he has some type of formal education in electricity. Well, that's great for him. Not everyone has studied electricity, and it's not fair at all to use that against somebody. Again, this is not any evidence whatsoever of hoarding, maybe ignorance, but whatever it is, it's not indicative of some tremendous moral failing. So basically, I consider this whole controversy a flawless illustration of why it doesn't pay to be morally righteous when it comes to pets. The entire PetTube thing seems to have devolved into a hierarchical system where people are screened and judged by how big the other's enclosure is and whatnot. Taylor took it upon herself to criticize the animals that I keep. She had videos saying not to buy blue tangs because they're wild caught, and yet she has wild caught animals. A big part of her image is presenting herself as a knowledgeable person who looks down on people who violate her beliefs. And so many of her followers have hooked onto this mentality, and that's why it kind of backfired on her. I worry about the many pet keepers who have made mistakes or perhaps didn't make a mistake, and animals tragically died anyway, which does happen. I mean, look at Pickles Pets. She's a fine animal YouTuber, a fine animal owner. She's had animals die in a relatively short amount of time. I believe 2 hamsters and 2 geckos at least. Now, could you imagine if this happened to Taylor and whatever got a hold of that information? She'd probably whine about something that likely had nothing to do with it, because you can't know what happened to an animal unless you do a necropsy. You can sit there and speculate, but you're never going to know for sure what happened. You can say, oh, the enclosure was too small. People would criticize stupid things like that, because that's pretty much what's happening to Taylor right now. And whatever did this, despite contributing to internet mob outrage that actually caused someone to call animal control to come to Taylor's house. I saw people saying someone should do that on the LOL Cow website, which is really bad. And I'm actually concerned about even putting up this video right now, because it could happen to me. You know, somebody can decide to nitpick my care, call animal control on me, and I'm taking a risk because I believe it's important to speak out on something like this. And whatever after that happened to Taylor, she continued to make videos, which I think is kind of malicious. It also needs to be mentioned that she's now monetized, so nitpicking people's animal care has essentially become her business model. She'll try to tell you she isn't doing it for money because she isn't making as much as she would like to at the moment, as if that's some kind of excuse. So the lesson of this story, these types of criticisms will come back to you. Do not throw stones when you live in a glass house. Just like the many zoos that are attacking exotic pet owners and pet owners that are attacking zoos, this type of discourse just serves to aid certain movements that want to ensure no one has any pets. When you decide that someone shouldn't own rats unless they have a 6-foot-long enclosure and play with them hours a day at minimum, guess how that ends? There's always someone with a bigger enclosure claims to spend more time with their animal. In the end, everyone will just decide no one should have pets.